Back in November, Disney released the sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, and despite some skepticism surrounding its internet-hopping narrative prior to release, the film was very well received by critics and audiences, pulled in solid numbers at the box office, and got an Oscar nomination. So why am I defending it? Well, among the Disney fandom, it proved to be surprisingly divisive, and a bit of a backlash has formed towards the movie. While I will not rank this among my favorite Disney animated films, and I do have a preference for the first one, I still found Ralph Breaks the Internet to be a winning sequel with a lot to appreciate. Oh, and just a warning, there will be spoilers, in case you have not seen the movie yet. Let's start with the obvious thing that seemed to rub people the wrong way, and that was the internet setting. Some people feel that having Ralph and Vanellope go to the internet and visiting real websites immediately dates the film, in contrast to the first movie, which had an emphasis on retro gaming and other sorts of video games. However, I think the directors Rich Moore and Phil Johnston, along with their co-writer Pamela Ribon, were able to avoid too many modern references that would immediately place the movie in 2018. The use of eBay as a plot device, for example. The filmmakers focused heavily on the auction aspect when depicting the website, as auctions are a timeless concept most people are familiar with. Same goes for the video sharing website used by Ralph and Vanellope in their quest to obtain a steering wheel for Sugar Rush. Video sharing is a platform that is not going away anytime soon, and the filmmakers were even careful with what memes to show. I actually found one of the best aspects of Ralph Breaks the Internet was how the artists at Disney Animation interpreted the World Wide Web. Each section, from the central metropolis to the creepy corners of the dark web, were creatively rendered for the film, and the use of tiny avatars for internet users surfing the web allowed for some humorous gags when we cut to the outside world. While the film is about a modern invention, Moore and Johnston included a lot of old-school touches in the character animation. The E-Boy especially looked like he walked out of a classic Disney cartoon. The Knowsmore search engine also brought to mind the Ranger in Disney shorts from the 50s, in design, animation, and Alan Tudyk's voice acting. Some of my favorite gags in the film actually come from Knowsmore. One much discussed scene is when Vanellope goes to Oh My Disney. Many felt this was just Disney showing off the many properties they own. Let's be honest, it's a good thing the movie was already released before the Disney-Fox merger was finalized, because having the Na'vi and Bart Simpson running around in the background would admittedly have been a little much. However, I otherwise did not mind the scene, and I thought the filmmakers clearly had a lot of fun with incorporating the various Disney IP during the scene. It never struck me as a corporate mandate, and it's not even the first time we've seen Disney pull this kind of synergy. House of Mouse, anyone? The scene that got the most attention was when Vanellope meets the Disney princesses. This has gotten a mixed response, as some feel the princesses are misrepresented. I think it's important to note that these are not the actual princesses from the movies, but rather digital avatars of them, and are not too beholden to their personalities in the films. I also thought the scene avoided many of the cliches common when joking about the Disney princesses. This line was an especially good touch.
Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up? Yes!
I thought that was a funny way of poking fun of those who frequently make that complaint about the princesses. Interestingly enough, when the scene was first shown to attendees at the D23 convention, they were depicted as a bit meaner, with even Miko the raccoon shown as more ferocious than he was in Pocahontas. So in the final cut, we're watching a toned-down version of how it was originally written. Curiously, the D23 footage was not included on the Blu-ray. Nonetheless, there was still no shock that a Disney production would have this sort of self-awareness and subversiveness. To which I say, have you seen Rich Moore's previous work? This is the director who cut his teeth on The Simpsons and The Critic, so it's not too surprising a similar biting sensibility would work its way into his feature films. Of course, the internet setting also brought forth comparisons to the Emoji Movie, even though outside of being animated films set on the internet and using real brands, the two don't have anything in common. Some viewers also took issue with the characterization of its leads, namely Ralph and Vanellope. I saw a few complaints that Ralph was annoying and too clingy, but I think that's kind of the point. The first movie establishes Ralph as being lonely in his game due to being ostracized as a villain. When he meets Vanellope, he finally has somebody he is close to, and the beginning of Ralph Breaks the Internet shows how close they've become. This fear of potentially being alone again creates a new type of anxiety for Ralph, resulting in him making bad decisions, like putting a virus in the new racing game Vanellope has fallen in love with. When Vanellope gets upset at Ralph for doing this, she is completely justified in her anger. The filmmakers then manifesting Ralph's cleanliness into a giant monster full of Ralph clones was a rather unexpected and clever move on their part. I genuinely did not see that ending coming, and it led to a brilliantly put together sequence by the directors and artists. Meanwhile, there were those disappointed Vanellope would decide to move to Slaughter Race and leave Sugar Rush. They felt she was being selfish, but I think it added to the themes being explored in Ralph Breaks the Internet. There comes a point where you need to let friends or family go to fulfill their dream and purpose, and Ralph learns that lesson in the movie. Plus, we got an entire Alan Menken number that goes into Vanellope's thoughts and concerns, so this is not something that comes out of the blue in the ending. I do have to wonder about the arcade patrons confused at the sudden disappearance of Vanellope, but as she says, there are 15 other racers. There was also disappointment at the short screen time of Fix-It Felix Jr. and Sergeant Calhoun. We see them adopting the Sugar Rush racers, and then again at the end, which led to the feeling that they were shortchanged. On the Blu-ray deleted scenes, it was revealed they initially had more scenes, but Moore and Johnston felt cutting back to them got in the way of the main storyline, and I have to agree with them. Including those scenes would have disrupted the flow of the film and probably weren't needed. If anything, it's funnier letting our imaginations come up with how Felix and Calhoun made the racers less rambunctious rather than seeing it. There's a common adage in storytelling, which is you have to cut your darlings, and Felix and Calhoun were the darlings in this case. I will say I do have a preference for Wreck-It Ralph, as I find the screenplay for the first film to be a tad tighter. There was also a freshness of how it brought the world of video games to life, and I felt the emotional moments hit harder. Nonetheless, I did find Ralph Breaks the Internet to be a sharply funny and highly creative endeavor from the folks at Walt Disney Animation. I've talked about the post-release reception and criticisms of the film, but there was also a lot of skepticism prior to the finished film hitting screens. Just from looking at the trailers, people were already making emoji movie comparisons, feeling disgusted at the use of corporate logos, and getting bothered by the inclusion of Oh My Disney. I've already discussed my position on prejudging movies plenty of times before, but it was especially odd with Ralph Breaks the Internet, because you would think the talent involved would give it the benefit of the doubt. In my opinion anyway, Walt Disney Animation Studios has been on a strong winning streak, delivering one exceptionally well-made film after another. Your opinions may vary on, say, Frozen or Big Hero 6 or Moana, but at this point, they're a studio that has proven they continue to put a ton of hard work, passion, and effort into their projects. I think their track record over the past 10 years has been especially remarkable, and I always look forward to what the storied studio that brought us Pinocchio, The Lion King, and Lilo and Stitch has cooked up next. Plus, there was the fact Ralph Breaks the Internet was conceived and co-directed by Rich Moore. Moore is an incredibly talented artist and animation director who's worked in the industry for about 3 decades now and has lined up some impressive credits. He directed some of the most popular and acclaimed episodes of The Simpsons, including Marge vs. the Monorail and Cape Fear, plus was heavily involved in the creative direction of the animated television series The Critic and Futurama. In addition to directing Wreck-It Ralph for Disney, he also served as a director on Zootopia. Rich Moore has been entertaining and bringing joy to animation lovers for 30 years, and people still doubted him? I just don't understand it. In any case, Ralph Breaks the Internet is another Disney winner in my book, and I think it will hold up far longer than people are predicting. See you next time.